Are we on? Hi, everyone. Good. Hi, everyone. We're here. I'm Anne Wojcicki. I'm the co-founder and CEO, and I'm so excited because one of my favorite topics at 23andMe is research, and it's like one of the big reasons why we started this company. And so I'm very lucky to have Jennifer McCreight here, who has she's been here for about a year.
Yep.
Is overseeing a lot of our outreach and communications around our research. She has a PhD in genome science from University of Washington.
Yes, correct.
And I forgot, you had something about, I think it was like yeast, or what was it?
I studied microRNA evolution.
Oh, good. Much more interesting than yeast, in my opinion. I feel bad. Like I skipped that section of my genetics class.
It's good to study yeast. It tells about bread, beer, all those good things.
It's so boring. It's like I did not come to study about yeast. I want to know about humans. So we're super excited. So today, like I said, I think some people realize, some people don't. When we started this company, we looked at, you have your human genome, the 3 billion base pairs. It's incredibly interesting. To me, it's like the most exciting scientific development of our lifetime. You have this mysterious code, and we don't know what it means. And that genuinely keeps me up at night. So I found like the only way you're going to start to solve this, it's like in some ways like a giant Rubik's Cube. The only way you're going to solve it is actually having more data. And who really cares about learning about themselves and trying to stay healthier and understanding their health? Who cares more than yourself? And so the idea with 23andMe was that like we can all come together because we have this common interest in all living to be, healthy at 100 and not like effectively managing our chronic diseases at 100, but like I'd really just love to be healthy at 100. And how are we going to do that is that we're all going to come together and we're going to pool together a lot of information, and we're going to learn why some people get sick, some people don't get sick, some people are sensitive to environments, some people are not sensitive to environments. And so for the last 12 years, I'm really proud of our research. I could talk on and on about this. I'm really proud of our research. So we have over 120 publications. We have, over 85% of our customers are consenting for research. We have a ton of, great scientific potential out of what can come here. And we're doing a lot of work on, basic genetic discoveries. We're doing a lot of work on prevention. What is it that in your environment? Are there ways to potentially prevent disease? And then we actually have a whole new area on drug discovery. Can we actually look at all this information that we have, and can we actually help our customers develop a drug that is going to ultimately benefit them and hopefully one day cure them? So it's been a super exciting time. I'm really happy that you're here.
Yeah, happy to come chat about research and talk about what a cool database we have.
Yes. We'll let you go from there.
Okay, let's get started. So Anne, this first question's for you.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about how the entire 23andMe research program started.
Well, so like I was saying, it started largely because I was investing on Wall Street and I saw that you had all these, Stanford would do a study and Harvard would do a study, and sometimes it was awful. Actually, when I was a student at UCSD, we spent 9 months working on this program, and then only to find out that someone then published on the exact same study, which you laugh because it's super common.
Yes, getting scooped.
You were just scooped. So I found like it was just a total waste of my time, and I just spent all this money and time on this. And so the idea was about how can we actually do research significantly more efficiently. And we used to say in those early days, I want to dramatically accelerate the pace of research and not have a few publications every year, but like I want hundreds, thousands. Like I want to bring all the people who have chronic migraines who are like really pained by them, or all the people who have Parkinson's disease who are really pained by them. Like bring them all together because those people all really care about their disease, and help them then make those discoveries about like what is it in the environment that potentially helps them, and what is it with the medications. And so the idea was that we all just kind of need to come together. We have this common mission in humanity that we would want to be healthy. And similar, I was always inspired by the walks that you see with Livestrong and Susan G. Komen, and people are out there saying like, I want to engage and I want to be healthier. I want to make a cure. I want to make a discovery. I want to like figure out why this is happening. And so 23andMe is really that online platform, like a way for people to come together and do that. And I think that's why we have such a high engagement rate of our research. It's over 85%. And we, like for me, another big part was the transparency, always allowing people to know when you're participating in research, when you're not participating in research, and give people that choice. And what we find overwhelmingly is like, especially if I have a condition, I'm super interested in participating in it because like it's affecting my family and I want to see a difference.
Great. Jennifer, this question's for you. What kind of research does 23andMe do?
Basically everything is the short answer, but we really...
It was always hard to limit ourselves.
Yes. Well, that's part of the benefit of having such a big, diverse database, and that we collect these survey data questions on all sorts of different topics, from anything from really severe diseases like cancer or Parkinson's to behavioral traits, lifestyle, personality traits, and sometimes even just kind of fun things like what kind of chocolate do you like? There are all sorts of things peppered in the database. So we really cover a lot of different topics, but I would say in terms of specific research we do, what we consider our bread and butter is really this thing called GWAS, which stands for Genome-Wide Association Study. And what that basically does is you take a particular trait or disease of interest, let's say Parkinson's disease, that's one that we've studied for a long time here over the last decade. And you take people who have Parkinson's and then people who don't have Parkinson's and basically look to see what genetic variants are more common in the group that have Parkinson's versus the one that doesn't. And by doing stuff like that, we can actually start figuring out what genetic variants are causing this disease, or narrowing in on it at least. And so that's one of the really common analyses we do, and it's been able to let us find out all sorts of cool things for hopefully leading to a treatment one day.
Exactly.
Great. So speaking of which, Sandra on Instagram wants to know, how exactly is 23andMe data used for drug discovery?
Great question. So part of it is that there have been studies that have shown that if you start with genetic data when you're doing drug discovery, you're actually twice as likely to succeed in that process, which is really important just given how expensive and complicated drug discovery is. And so what you can do is basically narrow in on parts of the genome that you know are associated with the disorder and try to start from there to look for what can be a targetable drug target. And so part of what you can do with a cool, huge database like ours is that we've collected all this non-genetic information, and so we can actually compare these variants with lots of different traits and perhaps see like, oh, this variant actually is associated with asthma or allergies, and that might not have been something we knew, but now we can think, oh, maybe if you target that variant, then that can fix one of those things that's popping up. And so we can actually use this huge diverse database to try to like hone in on what the starting point should be in the drug development process.
And it's part of the reason why like having so much data actually is really valuable. So it's one thing that's really interesting in the data set that we see is that there's people who are what we call escapers. So some people might be really high risk for a condition, but they never develop it. And so it's super interesting to see like, well, why did they never develop it? And could those people potentially help us understand what could potentially be a cure here? So again, one of the inspirations for starting this and actually doing drug discovery, and some people don't understand, is that drug discovery actually is incredibly expensive, like you talked about. So when I first started investing in healthcare, it was only $500 million to make a drug. And now it's almost $2.5 billion to make a drug. So I often like say, I was like, drug discovery is the only business I know that's like communism, where like they actively promote how they're like just worse every year. And so I said, I was like, imagine like if your laptop, was $1,000 back in 2000, but now it's like $50,000. Like it's just crazy. Yeah. And so part of it is like drug discovery is an incredibly expensive, it's time consuming. And if we're ever really going to, manage and cure diseases, like you have to take a more radically different approach to how you're going to start with a better foundation. And what we've really tried to build here is say, let's have just a better foundation of information so that we don't fail as often in drug discovery, that we can actually like really develop like not just a slightly better drug, but like something that's going to be game changing. Like I admire the hepatitis C drug. Like it cures hepatitis C. Like it's amazing. Like, it's really, like, I think about it every day. Like, it's amazing. We cured a disease. And I want us to say something like that. Like, at some point we'll say, it's the people's drug discovery, and we cured diseases. Like, how cool would that be? Yeah. So I think that's where, you know, we try to, our customers, we find, especially those who have a disease, and every single family has a disease in it. Like, we're going to try to, like, my success in 10 years is that when we can say, like, look back and be like, high five and be like, okay, we cured this disease. Down, like, next one.
Pretty awesome.
It would be pretty awesome.
Great. So going off of that, what are some of the accomplishments that 23andMe research has made to date?
Well, there are a whole bunch, but some to just start with. We contributed to one of the biggest studies on depression out there, which that was really hard to pin down in the past, because with diseases like depression, what's happening is it's not just necessarily one genetic variant is giving you the disease. It's not like one genetic variant causes depression. But what actually happens is there are thousands of genetic variants that all have very small effects on contributing to that disease, and they add up into the resulting disease. And so with depression, in order to figure out what those variants are, you just need a really huge sample size. And so even though this was a disease that was really well studied up until this point, people weren't able to pinpoint the variants associated with it because they just didn't have enough participants. Right. And we were able to do that just from the sheer size of the data. So that's one that's really cool. Like I mentioned earlier, Parkinson's has been one of our longest running research programs here. We found a number of variants that are associated with that. So we're hoping that will give more insight on what actually causes the disease. Until recently, people didn't even think Parkinson's was partially genetic. And so being able to shed some light on that is really awesome. I don't know if you have any others that you particularly want to add, or?
You know, it's interesting. Of late, I've been meeting all these sleep people. And it's interesting, like, how much our circadian rhythm paper gets a lot of, like, sleep is sort of, you know, sleep is suddenly the hot topic of, like, people are starting to recognize, like, how much sleep influences your health. Like, you don't sleep enough, you can potentially be overweight, you could just have chronic problems, you can have stress, like, all kinds of issues come. And we did some pretty interesting research on circadian rhythm and sleep. So I think that actually, like, it kind of starts to show too, is like how we can ask, like, in one of the questions we just asked people, are you a night owl or are you a morning person? And we found this strong genetic connection. Yeah. And so it's pretty interesting how sometimes you can have very simple studies that show, like, wow, here's a genetic association, and now we're seeing sleep has all these influences. And sometimes it's more complicated, like depression. So I kind of love the variability of those two.
Yeah, and with sleep, we are following up on that, and we're doing an insomnia study right now, and it has crossed the 1 million participant line.
Oh, which, I didn't know.
Yes, yeah, and so that's amazing. I think it's one of the first GWAS out there to actually just have that many people participating in it.
It's interesting. So, and that's like an interesting example is where we can make a discovery, and then we expand on that. So, like, everything for me is like we kind of start with no hypothesis, like no idea. Like, we're just going to collect a lot of information. We'll see what happens. And then we find a hypothesis, like, okay, sleep, and here's these genetic variations. And then we see insomnia is clearly a big issue with our customers, and they're all interested in it. And so, wow, like, that would be great. How can we actually how can we influence that? And the thing also I love is, like, looking at areas like, okay, some of it might be medication related, but some of it might be about, you know, stop drinking caffeine before 4 o'clock. Or, you know, after 4 o'clock, or, you know, stop using your phone 2 hours. Like, maybe you should stop 2 hours before you go to bed, and I only need to stop an hour before I go to bed. But starting to understand also some of that behaviors, and that's a really big area of focus for us, is the gene by environment. And, like, how is it that your genes, you know, are influenced then by your environment, and what is it that you can actually change?
Yeah, definitely.
Because so much of your life, like, you can actually, if you just make a few changes, has a big impact on your health.
Yeah, I think people think that genetics kind of means fate. Like, you're destined to have this outcome, where often it's really an interaction between genes and environment.
That's the whole beauty. Like, for me, again, I always say this when we do this live, like, the beauty for me of genetics specifically is that debate between gene and environment. Is that, like, your genes interact with your environment. You can't change your genes, but you can absolutely change your environment. So just tell me what to do. And that's what we're trying to figure out. I want instructions. Obedience.
So some customers are hesitant to allow their data to be used for this type of research for a variety of reasons, whether it be privacy, not believing anything will come out of it. What would your response be to those people?
You know, it's one of those things I've always said, like in the early days, we got that question that was like, oh, there's some people who just like, they really don't want to do it. Like they're afraid of like privacy and whatnot. I was like, well, then don't do it. Like it's totally fine. I think part of what we really feel is important for people, especially in healthcare, is to give people choice. And it's part of where I personally feel like I never get choice in healthcare. Like I was at the doctor yesterday with my son and it was like, oh, the doctors are all going to talk and then we'll send you back something. I was like, well, can I be on the email with them? And they're like, no. Like we will just talk about you and then we'll tell you. I was like, that's obnoxious. And like being told, you know, like even my HIPAA, like you can't see the doctor without signing all these forms. Like I just find it like, again, it's sort of an outrage. And I think for us, again, I really see us as like we're a reflection of our customers and we really want to give people choice. And if you want to participate in research, participate in research. If you don't want to participate in research, don't participate in research. If you decide you're participating and then you don't like some of the questions and you want to opt out, you just click a button and you opt out. So for me, it's really important for people to feel like you're in control, and you're in control in so many other parts of your life. And like more and more, you should be in control of your health. So, and if you want to participate in the research, like be in control of that. And continue to, like, when we inspire you, and it's our job to inspire you to be part of research, then you add more and more. And if you're not inspired, well, then yeah, then it's our problem. Like we, you know, you're not inspired or you don't want to do it for some reason. And so we're absolutely about our customers' choice and their desires to participate or not participate.
100% agree. If you know someone was on the fence out there and looking for that argument to participate, I think the one thing I would say is, you know, we're already seeing the impact we're making. Yeah. I know to like the average person, a scientific paper doesn't seem like an immediate payoff, and that's just because science works very slowly. You know, we're making kind of the first steps and inroads into these diseases, but it's going to take lots and lots of follow-up studies and research into drugs before you actually see that tangible outcome. But from my point of view, you know, I was a research participant much before I was actually an employee here, and it was just that, you know, like you said earlier, your family always has certain diseases that run in them. You have your own personal things that you want to find out, and I want to learn more about myself. But you know, even if the research is slow, that it doesn't affect me, I just feel better knowing that I've contributed to the world in some way, that I'm helping other people, even if it doesn't directly benefit me.
I think one thing I'd recommend people do who are also like want to understand it more and like understand how it works is look at our publications, because that really is the output of the last 12 years. Like, what have we done when we've been doing research? And I find like we also work really hard to make sure that all of our customers can read the papers that we have. So we either have a blog post about it, and then we also have the corresponding papers. And you know, again, it's been important for us to make sure like a lot of papers are not open access. So it's important for us to make sure that like customers could read those papers if they want, but there's always a simplified version of the paper on the blog. And you know, we try to make sure our customers like that we continue the loop. You know, you gave us information, we did research, we published on it, and you know what those results are. And sometimes those results actually turn back into the product. And so that's a really fun aspect. But I would encourage people then who just want to understand it more then to look at the publications that we actually have and see what are the types of discoveries we're trying to make.
Yeah, and you can find those at 23andme.com/publications, and that links to all the blog posts, so you have a nice, good summary there.
Great. When 23andMe uses my data for research, how do you keep personal information private?
Great question. So all of the research that we do with your data, it's all de-identified. So what that means is your name, email, phone number, credit card information, that is all separate from your genetic information. And we keep that very compartmentalized in terms of who's going to look at it within 23andMe. So someone on the research team who's actually doing an analysis would not be able to access your name and all those kind of details, only your genetic information and the answers to survey questions that you're submitting. And so the same goes when, you know, if we're collaborating with an academic institution or another industry partner, when we collaborate, we don't ever directly sell them your data. I know that's a big myth that floats around out there. We're not giving them, you know, access to your raw genome sequence. What we're doing is sharing aggregate statistics. So we could say something like, men between age 30 and 40 who have Parkinson's disease tend to have this variant at this percentage in the genome. And so we do that to try to protect your privacy. We don't want anyone identified from that data, especially when we're doing publications. So we have to strike that balance between, making some data available open access for other scientists for research purposes, because we can only do so much science on our own. We're only so many people on our team, and so having the ability to have other scientists follow up on those studies is great, but we don't want to give identifying information so people can find out all sorts of things about you.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, because every so often people come up and they say like, oh, I see you sell data. I'm like, we don't sell data. Like it's not what we do. So to your point is you can look at it all, and the same way you can read statistics about almost anything in life and you say, oh, like it's this, all these people, again, the 35-year-old, men of, European descent and then men of African American descent, here are the summary of statistics about them. So there's nothing identifiable in there, and it's a very different than, selling your individual data. So that's not what we do. And we feel like, again, privacy at this company, we always said we have no foundation of this company if we can't do everything we can to protect customers' privacy. So it's core to the company of saying like, we give you choice, and we are going to do everything we can to protect your privacy, because part of choice is knowing how your information is being used and how it's not being used.
Yeah, and part of that choice is, you get to opt in to research, not opt out, and there's no difference in the product if you opt in or out. We don't want to try to like coerce people into participating. And so even when we're sending these aggregate statistics to research partners, if you did not opt into research, your data is not even getting shared in aggregate. So we're definitely not just spreading it around like some people think.
Great, thank you. So I know that with the research that we do, we're able to make genetic associations. Some of those become trait reports. So Carrie on Facebook wants to know, as the technology improves, do you update the accounts to add new discoveries?
Yes. So I know, like, for example, our ancestry report is pretty frequently updated as we get more reference populations, and we're able to basically further refine subgroups within different locations. But I know our other reports, there are always new things getting added there. Like just earlier this year, we added a BRCA report, and there's always all sorts of different trait reports coming out. So it's kind of a living report. As the research advances, you get new news as well.
Yeah, I mean, we really try to keep updating accounts. So again, making sure the reports stay up to date, but then also when we make a discovery, that those discoveries come out and go back to our customers. So you see a lot of those in sort of these little mini reports, and you see also a lot on our blog.
Great. Is 23andMe doing further research on either rare minority groups or ethnicities?
Yes, we have a whole lot of different initiatives in this realm. It's really an issue for the field of genomics as a whole, in that genomics research has been predominantly done in European populations, and they've really ignored a lot of these other populations in the world, which is unfortunate given that the results we find from European populations might not translate to everyone else. And we want everyone to have the sort of health benefits from this genetic revolution that's happening. So we have a global genetics project that's all about getting people from underrepresented countries, especially in our ancestry report. We also have a more academic population collaboration program where we partner with academic researchers who are studying these underrepresented populations. And one thing we've been working on recently is this African sequencing project. And so what that does is, well, we do genotyping for our kit, which is different from sequencing in that we're looking at very specific locations in the genome, not the whole genome. But you can do this thing called imputation in science, where you fill in the gaps based off reference genomes. And so we've actually just sequenced a couple thousand whole genome sequences from African individuals so that we can start doing these genome-wide association studies in that population. And so it won't just be for European populations. We'll be starting to do those very soon for African populations as well.
Yeah, I think that's it's a big initiative of the company, and that's part of it for us is also having size and scale, is like being able to represent all ethnicities. And so we have this ability now to actually start doing genome-wide association studies in almost every population. And so more and more we will actually start trying to fill in those gaps of like all different groups and make sure that genetic association studies are equally represented.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much.
Wait.
It's the last.
No, I have one. Wait, I have one more. I was going to say, it was like my favorite genetic association of late. Sorry, I must tell you. I love the blog post about the very important. There is a genetic association between people who like chocolate ice cream versus vanilla. I just I can't believe it. I find it so crazy. Like the fact that our data set found a genetic association between people who like chocolate and vanilla, I just love it. Because my children also are like that. One really likes chocolate, one likes vanilla. And it's genetic. All right, that's it. We can end there.
What about you? Which is your favorite?
That was my favorite. My genetic. Oh, what's my favorite?
Ice cream.
Chocolate.
I'm more complicated than just like chocolate and vanilla. I actually should look up my own DNA and see that. I would go with chocolate.
Great. So it's the last Leg with Anne of 2018. Any last words for your viewers?
It's been such a great 2018, but again, it's one of those things at the end of the year you look back and review and you say like, wow, we did so much. But honestly, 2019, because we've just finished a lot of our 2019 planning, 2019 is going to be so much more exciting. And that's the beauty of science, is that every year you're building on the past. And so everything we just discovered and everything we put out is there. Now we have this amazing foundation to just keep building on it. So look forward to seeing you all in 2019, and we have a lot more planned for you.
So will there be more Live with Annes in 2019?
I assume so. Are you kicking me off? Did you fire me? I love it. We just finally got it down. I'm not staring at the screen right there anymore. It's great. I brushed my hair and all. It's good. My mom told me. Can you please brush your hair?
All right. Well, thanks so much, Anne and Jennifer, for your time.
Thank you so much. So great.